Power Station at BerkleeNYC presents Tales from the Tape Vault with Roy Hendrickson.
Hi, my name is Roy Hendrickson, and today we're going to speak with Josh Abbey. Josh began at Power Station around 1980 and has worked on many wonderful records. Today he has some really wonderful stories to share. Hi, Josh. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, Roy. My pleasure.
How did you come to find out about Power Station? Did you come there early on, or did you hear about it?
Yeah, I knew about it when it was getting built. I was friends with Ivan Walters and Don Berman, who was one of the original engineers there. They all came from media, including Bob and Tony, of course.
Sure.
And Ivan, who was actually a really pretty talented disc cutter. Ivan cut Moody Blues stuff, and that's when obviously mastering was disc cutting, and it was a different kind of skill than some twerp with EQ and compression deciding that he's mastering, right. In Pro Tools is the stupidest thing I ever heard. But I'm not gonna go down that road.
Sure.
Not far anyway. These weren't really people that I knew besides Ivan, but I knew Lourdes was a studio manager. She desperately wanted to get rid of some guy who was there. They call them interns now. We didn't call him anything then. He was the front desk guy, and he used to torture the artists who came in and bother the crap out of everybody. The worst of it apparently was that he never showed up on time. So she wanted to get rid of him, and she asked me more than once, and I said, "You going to pay me for sitting there and answering the phone that doesn't ring until, and for sharpening pencils?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." I was there by 8 always, doing what I was supposed to do. And Bob Walters would come in. I like the New York Times. They would pick it up, and Bob would come in and say hello. We'd chat for a second. One day he said to me, "Before you leave today, come up and see me, please." And I said, "Sure." He sat down in front of me. He said, "What are you doing with your life?" I said, "I'm not really sure, to be honest." And he said, "Do you think you might want to try to make it here?" And I said, "As what?" And he said, "Well, maybe head towards engineering and that kind of thing." And he says, "It's not for everybody. You may spend a lot of time here and find that you're not suited for it, that you don't really have the talent, or you don't really have the interest." And I certainly had the interest. I didn't know if I had the talent, but I had no shortage of self-confidence about anything creative or like that. And I just said, "Yeah." I said, thought about it, and I said, "Sure." And what I would do is in the morning, do that, and then move up the stairs to the tape library, to all the things that you did.
Sure, absolutely.
That we started with. A little bit of time into when it became a full-time thing for me, Johnny Bon Jovi showed up one day. This young kid sitting in front of me, and we were just chatting. He was wearing jeans and jazz shoes, and he said that he was Tony Bon Jovi's how many removed cousin, and next thing you knew, he said, "What? We were just bullshitting," and he said, "What's with you?" He said, "I'm a musician. I want to be a recording artist." And he said, "Great." So he stayed on, and we did everything together for about the next 7 or 8 months. We covered all the responsibilities, including driving. You remember that big Buick Electra? Was that still there when you were around?
I think it was, no. Was that Bob's car?
Yeah. We were including driving that to Bank Leumi on 5th Avenue and circling the block to get the payroll.
I used to go do that too.
Right.
That's so funny.
We did all that stuff, driving stuff downtown for Ed and Ira Kemp to, take the big Altec speakers to be reconed, all the crap. We split the tape library duties, and we helped each other out, and we spent most of the first few hours afternoon together, and then found different stuff to do. A couple of times, like we walked into places together, like CBS Records I remember this pretty well. Johnny was a good-looking guy. And we walked into CBS Records when they still had tons of employees. And to drop off a couple of boxes of some record, I don't know, and or tapes, who remembers? And we're going through, and every woman that, as Johnny was walking in front of me, and as he was walking by, every woman did one of these. And I said, this guy's got a good shot at going somewhere. You know, sure. I mean, he was a head turner for them. And
that's funny.
Then we started working on, when I started to get into studios, doing exactly what you and Gary described the other day, is spending every minute of time that I could, when I didn't have another responsibility. If there was an open room, asked permission, took out a tape box, asked about whose box it was, whether it was one of Bon Jovi Walter's productions, or whether it was an artist. There was a band called The Windows, where I knew those guys that Scott had engineered for. Then they're really good, and I would figure out how to mix stuff, figure out how to do everything.
Sure.
And just spent a ton of time whenever I could mixing it. I had mixed for months before I ever actually recorded something.
Wow.
And I remember Bob assigning me one of the BW artists to do it from 5:30 a.m. until I started. This guy was a go-go guy from DC, named Yardbird, and he was really good. But there was no sequencing. We played everything. And remember the first time I set up a mic and started recording him, and I said, oh, you know what? I was afraid to record, but I had been mixing for months. And I said, oh, this is just like mixing, except it's microphones instead of tape.
Right.
And that really became how I saw everything for the rest of my...
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Everything for me was from a mix perspective, and the mics, adjusting mics, EQing, whatever it was, setting them up wherever it was. It was according to my mixing ears.
Yeah, because I remember hearing, I think I mixed one song of yours that you recorded for a Japanese artist. It was a big orchestra, but it had a killer rhythm section in it. And I was like blown away.
Yeah, they were called SMAP, S-M-A-P.
That's correct. That's right.
Yeah, 110 pieces.
Sounded amazing. Sounded ridiculous. The
Thanks.
drums sounded like finished already. It was just like way above what you're used to getting. I remember my mouth was on the floor. I'm like, shit, how did you do that?
110. Yeah, that was a wow. Yeah. That was huge. They were huge.
I really liked how that general attitude and feeling about Power Station was, a lot of camaraderie between everybody, but there was also a real seriousness, like a mission critical seriousness to way to run sessions and set them up.
We had a huge, we were taught, and all of us, it was sort of unspoken but spoken. Every one of us had a huge amount of pride in doing things the right way and doing things the best we could.
Sure.
And not cutting corners, and whether or not the effort was going to take longer or shorter, it was all meaningless.
So when you started to finally do engineering all the time, for me it was a little bit of a slow transition. Was it the same for you, or did they just start putting you on dates, or did clients kind of do it for you? Or
I would say the first date. Look, I started on Infidels with assisting Neil. Mark had to leave to go on tour. But when Mark left, Neil decided to go too. So I spent the next period of time, I did all the engineering from there on out. Every kind of instrument, including sessions with Ron Woods and things like that. No, it was great. It was great. I would get an assistant too. So I was on a project because I knew the project. I was a logical choice. And if I could handle putting up a microphone and not screwing that up and getting a headphone mix out,
sure.
Who else was going to be better for it?
That's right.
At that point.
Favorite sessions?
I would have to say, Dylan, obviously. Infidels, and I did his next album, all the New York work, called Empire Burlesque. And here's a commentary on the times. Imagine Bob Dylan at a place with 3 rooms not being able to get time. There was no time at Power Station. I mean, there were second and third holds on everything for 3 rooms. Imagine that. So yeah, those are 2 favorites. Pretty much everything I did with Bernard, and maybe not even for the album, but for the fun that we had. Brian Wilson worked with all the New York stuff. I actually recorded the song Love and Mercy. Jimmy Braylauer did work on that. Russ Titleman was producing, and that was a major thrill. What a human being Brian Wilson was. I worked with two geniuses and a bunch of virtuosos. I put Dylan as a genius. I put Brian Wilson as a genius. I loved working with Jack and Lee on It Was the Knack, Graham Parker. Worked with Carlos Santana, who was a side player for a McCoy Tyner album. He was a side man. McCoy told me he didn't know who he was. Santana was a huge fan of McCoy Tyner's and used to show up backstage at all his shows, and McCoy Tyner didn't know who he was or why he was there, but he was really nice to him. Then he found out he was his guitarist. Right. And so that band was really good, and that was a huge thrill for me because I was a maniac for Santana, especially his live stuff. I talked to him a bunch about it, especially an album that he did in Japan called Lotus, which is a 3-record set and really stretches out into like all this. And he would pay tribute to a lot of jazz musicians in the long jam songs. You'd hear him paying tribute to My Favorite Things and even Purple Haze, things like that. I remember asking him, because he had a live album in the States too called Moonflower, a double album, which
I remember that, yeah.
That was a major thrill for me. Also, I have great, wonderful memories of the first album that I did, beginning to end, with Barry Goudreau and Tony and Lenny Pizzi. We had a ball. We laughed a lot. Aerosmith was another fantastic. I assisted Larry. Tony was the producer. Jack Douglas came in. Godfrey Diamond showed up. I did a tremendous amount of engineering on that record, which Larry had started the tracks. And then Godfrey Diamond, they took it somewhere else, and Godfrey Diamond, I think, mixed it with Jack. But there were some wild nights.
Which record was that?
It's called Rock in a Hard Place.
Oh, yeah, sure. Wow.
And Jimmy Crespo was the guitarist. My other favorite, actually, is my artist, Russell Watson, the UK tenor. Opera, and really exposed me to a lot. And he's not a nose in the air opera guy. He's a regular wide bass who just happens to be great at it. We were lucky to have the careers that we did.
Yeah.
It's not going to come around again. Maybe things will get great again for people in music and in recording at some point in the future, but it won't be like that was. You won't have Roxy Music in one room coming. I love the Haitian records that we used to do too. James Farber, the best recorder I've ever worked with.
Amazing, right?
It was almost hard to improve on his tracks. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Which is why he's perfect for the world that he's in, that he was in for a long time. I don't know what he's doing now, but doing jazz stuff that just gets almost nothing after the fact. Straight to 2-track and things like that. Fantastic. Best by far. And you can tell that to Neil and everybody else. They'll probably agree.
Yeah, sure.
So I learned a tremendous amount from him, doing all those Haitian records and then doing a bunch of them myself. This is the guy from Roxy Music, Rhett
Davies. Yeah.
Rhett Davies coming out, hearing a Haitian singer, a young lady named Yannick Etienne, who was singing in the hallway of Studio B, the control lock.
Sure.
While there was a band playing too, doing the reference vocal, and them hearing from coming out of A, doing Roxy Music, hearing her through the door, and she winds up being the voice on Avalon.
Nice. Wow.
Right. I mean, you're not going to have situations like that where you have David Bowie running into this one in the elevator, and like that exchange is not going to happen anymore. Certainly not sitting in your sweatpants in front of a Mac in a corner of your house. It's not going to happen.
Not at all. I miss those days. You walk past somebody, you see somebody point at the other person and go, hey. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed spending time with you today, and hopefully one day we can do it in person.
Really was my pleasure, Roy. Thinking back on all the really good times We're really lucky to have been part of something that great, and talking to you makes me feel great about the good old days and us having pretty much the same roots and similar lines to our careers, and we were lucky. Great times. Take care.